club members, Kathy Saucier, are going to talk to us about composting. And she's a passionate organic gardener and will speak to us on how to recycle vital nutrients that all plant life depends upon and divert your food waste and to keep it from going to the landfills. Also, if you will hold your questions till the end, so she has time to get through all her stuff she needs to get through. Okay, so no questions during, and she'll answer any questions that you have after she's done. Here's Kathy. Kathy.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here today and share my passion about composting and building healthy soil. I want to welcome all the guests and just thank you for the privilege and the honor to share with you today. Composting is my heart. It's all about building healthy soil to me. Everything that we're doing, the biological processes below the ground is what's going to create our healthy soil and help remove the things that are fighting you, that are creating all the hard work you have in gardening. Gardening can be more of a pleasure when you're organic gardening and letting the microorganisms do all the work. Yes. Sorry. Well, composting is important because a rind, to me, it's a terrible thing to waste. So I put it in my kitchen composting bin and carry it out to my compost pile. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same thing. When you eat a banana, don't throw that peel. It's such a valuable source of nutrients for your garden, for your compost. Those toilet paper rolls and paper towel rolls, these are some of my favorites. If you don't want to use them, collect them and bring them to me. It's just thin cardboard material, natural fibers that I run it through my paper shredder and use for my vermicomposting, my worm farm, and my compost bin. So just open it up and run it through. So again, if you don't use them, these kinds of things I do. So I'm going to encourage you today. I hope that I will inspire you to want to compost and build healthy soil. It's nature's way to grow. It's been around a long time, since the beginning of time. I was reading just this morning. We have been given the stewardship of our soil, of our earth. And we can all do our part. Compost is a living organism. It's a continuation and the intensification of the natural cyclic processes perfected and stabilized for billions of years, even before the appearance of vascular plants who sank roots down into the soil to make their symbiotic advantage. Plants feed microbes, and microbes feed our plants. Compost is largely a highly diverse population of decomposing living nutrients, cycling microbes and their predators. It's decomposed plant matter and humics. Finished compost is aerobic. It has plenty of oxygen, a very key thing. Properly hydrated to about 40 to 50%, just exactly what they need. We compost to eliminate the pathogens and the unwanted seeds. There are different types of composting, and I'm also a worm farmer, which is called vermicompost. That's one of the things that is not available through that. So just to share, I'm not going to talk on vermicomposting today, but it's one of the things that having a thermal pile, you can best ensure to do this process. It concentrates nutrients in ways that make them bioavailable to our plants, to give them just exactly what they need. Example, if you eat food or take vitamins, have any kind of nutrient supplement, and your body does not assimilate it, what's the point? It's really kind of wasted money, wasted time. So the things that we add as amendments to our soils, to our plants, if it's not made available in a way that your plants will utilize it, there's some waste going on and some work that you're putting out that could be maximized in a different way. It helps to support, optimize, and balance the soil microbe population. Everything's going on down there. Compost recycles vital nutrients all plant life depends on. It's so important. It diverts food waste away from our landfill. You know, if we take a ton of food waste and don't send it to our landfill, we're saving almost a ton of CO2 emissions. It also prevents the creation of methane. That's the powerful greenhouse gas that we have coming off of our landfills. This is not a desirable thing. This is something we want to divert. There's a whole soil food web, and we are stewardships of our soil. As soil stewards, we aim to support the growth in the beneficial organisms that minimize the influence of potentially harmful organisms. It helps to defer the things that we don't want, the things that are attacking our plants. So we want to build a healthy soil ecology. A soil food web is the community of organisms living all or part of their lives in the soil. Our plants derive solar energy and receive carbon dioxide above the soil. Everything else is going on here. So this is what we're going to concentrate on today to help you gain an understanding and I hope an interest in paying more attention to what's going on there. A soil food web is a complex living system in the soil, and it shows how it interacts with the environment, the plants and the animals. It's the difference between dirt and soil. Today you'll gain a better understanding of that, I hope. Soil is more than just minerals and organic matter. It's alive with millions of microorganisms, earthworms, beetles, grubs, and larger creatures, all doing their work, doing their part to contribute. There are many visible organisms that inhabit the soil. And there are also countless microorganisms that we can't see with our naked eye. This illustration of the soil food web shows the various trophic levels. A trophic level is the position that that part plays, it occupies in the food web system. It's the number of steps it takes to reach the start, from the start of the chain to where we are as consumers. So there's the plant life, the organic matter, the bacteria, fungi, nematodes. There's beneficial nematodes as well, those that you may be acquainted with that are attacking your roots in your plants. But they all play a part. The protozoa, the arthropods, the birds, the animals. We've had a talk on attracting birds, bees, butterflies to our gardens, and just understanding that whole ecosystem and the importance of it. There's a lot going on. The healthier a plant is, or a tree is, the more you'll see a vast and wide root system. It's going to dig down deep and spread wide. And the glue of that fungi and bacteria will be able to attach itself to that root system and feed it exactly what it needs. All of those microorganisms working below the soil surface. You know, your plants that are less healthy, your weeds and things, they have a shallow root system. They can be dislodged more easily. But when you have a healthy tree or plant, it's going to dig down deep. We want to create soil that is going to encourage that growth
and help that plant to derive all that it needs from the soil over a longer period of time. So we build soil over time. So if you haven't begun to do this, today's a new day. Today's a fresh start for you. And so I want to encourage you to be thinking throughout what I'm sharing with you today. It's all about what's going on here. Compost is a process of natural decomposition to transform our landscape and our kitchen waste into rich, valuable nutrients in our soil. Our best friends as composters is the bacteria, the fungi, the insects, the nematodes, earthworms, and the other creatures that are all part of that system working together. A balanced system supports soil stabilization, soil aeration, nutrient retention rather than loss, nutrient cycling, water retention, plant fertility, and carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration, if you're not familiar, is a carbon dioxide removal. It's done over a long-term period, and it captures the sequestration of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to slow and reverse the CO2 population. It mitigates that and reverses global warming. So it's an important aspect of something that we're wanting to do as we are soil stewards. Composting is allowing the microorganisms to do all the work for you. You're just providing those nutrients there that they can do a lot of work. It's proof that there's life after death. You'll see. I went to my compost pile yesterday, and it's just exciting to see the earthworms coming about in one particular. I have multiple piles, and even just see the structure demonstrated in there and the strands of the fungi and bacteria. It's just exciting to me. The real value of compost, it's black gold for your garden, for anything you're planting. It provides primary nutrients, trace minerals, humus, and the humic acids, all vital. Almost exactly what the plants require and in the form that it requires it. It unlocks minerals present in soil. Compost is a source of food for the earthworms, the insects, the microorganisms, and they help to prevent the diseases. It helps prevent soil-borne diseases. It's healthy soil, rather than putting dirt in there that is not living and a host for probably pathogens that you're not wanting to encourage. It contains beneficial nematode-destroying fungus. It's a treatment even for brown patch. They've used places that were just virtually dead, that had all kinds of problems, brought back to life by utilizing compost. It's just amazing if you do a search for all the things that it will do for you. It helps tighten the clay soil to where it becomes more friable, to where it'll crumble easier and create pathways for the oxygen to go into the soil, for it to breathe and to hold the water, making it available. Increases the airspace, the drainage, the soil aeration, and it resists compaction. It helps soil hold and store water better. You've heard a talk recently from our organic gardener that does the azalea trail, talking about how he had reduced watering and how much, it was in the thousands, wasn't it like $40,000 a month he was saving in watering? It's just such an exciting system, how it can benefit you. Compost contains growth-promoting hormones for plants, encouraging healthy root growth. So they go deep and wide, reaching out for all that is going to bring the healthiest results. Plants tolerate droughts, insects, and disease. Make them prepare them stronger. It acts as a buffer against chemicals and absorption of heavy metals by plants. That is just in the atmosphere and all the things around, just the water runoff. Anytime you are putting something inorganic, an artificial means of fertilization, amendment, anything you're putting on it that is not part of that system, it's going to leach the healthy things that you want for your plants out of it, rather than supplying and protecting it with the things that it can most benefit from. The microbes break down chemical pollutants, pesticides and herbicides. Does that over a period of time. It's going to clean up and wash out the things that are not doing the job that you want it to. Makes yards safer for children and pets to roam. And we do want a more positive environment there. Compost helps buffer against extremes in acidity or alkalinity, the highs and the lows of the pH factor. Compost tea or extracts are excellent fertilizers. They're natural fungicides. They can be used as foliators to amend any situation you're wanting to correct. If you see signs of anything in your garden that's not looking like it's supposed to, this is a good remedy to go in and change the atmosphere of those plants. Each year that you compost, and it's used in your garden, in your yards, that soil's going to get healthier and you're going to grow better plants. Compost is going to save you a lot of money, a lot of time and work. You could be a lazy gardener and do a better job, exactly, with compost. You're letting all the beneficials do the work for you. It's made from 100% recycled materials that are diverted from our landfills, creating things that we don't want them to. So as you pick up something, as you eat a piece of fruit, or as you trim you peel your potatoes, all those things you do in your kitchen, if you can think, do I want that in my landfill? Or is there some benefit that can come out of that if I put it in a compost? There's something you can do with that. So just to change your thinking. As an example, something that I do in my home is I keep a trash bowl. This stays around. It's very easy. It's all, I fill this up so quickly when I'm prepping food because I'm health conscious. I want to encourage a healthy gut microbiome to guard against the ills of the world and all the things that we're more concerned about right now. So I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, a lot of living food, and stay away from the things that are dead, that are processed. I want something that is grown as a plant rather than made in a plant. So I use this kind of system where just a little something. It could be something that you have, just a disposable thing, rather than throwing it in the landfill. Can this be repurposed? Can this be used some way? You can actually turn something like this into a little compost bin by adding just the regular carbon filter. Cutting that, you can cut some aeration holes on the top. You can glue gun that to the lid and just start putting some things in there. Or you could just use it as something to collect until you say, okay, I'm going to go bring this out. If you go dig a hole, I remember many years ago, my early steps towards composting was just to go and dig a hole and stick it somewhere near a flower bed. Anyway, just as I was growing, it's like, it's going in the dirt. It's not going in the landfill. But just kind of changing your thinking of those little baby steps of what can I do? What could this be used for? Rather than throwing these things in the trash. This is what I use as just kind of like a trash bowl. You might just have some bowl lying around or some little bin like that you can throw those things in, give you a minute to think, what am I going to do with that? If you can't figure out what to do with it, you collect it, save it for me. I'll put it to good use. I use a little composting bucket outside on my patio as a first step to bringing my composting materials from my kitchen and steps to my compost bin. My compost bins are on the furthest corner of my property, so I get my exercise that way, going back and forth, and I love it because every time I'm giving a little poke or turn or fooling with those things, it's just such health-producing activity. But in the process, what if it's rainy days? What if there's some reason that would be preventative from you being able to, make that walk to your compost pile, however close or far it is? Maybe having stages of that. So it could be something just an open bowl as you're preparing your meals, and then you transfer it into something closed. Example, and when we eat a banana or my lemon juice in the morning, something, that could attract fruit flies. So I don't leave it very exposed. I want that covered up. So if temporarily I'm just throwing a towel over that, or I'm just putting it something more closed. Any of your little disposable things, just find a place for it. One of the things I use several different methods because I'm always eating produce of some sort around the house. Anything, maybe it could be something that matches your kitchen decor, just color-wise, or it could be decorative. Just put it in there so that it has a place to go. And you think first, what's going to be my first step towards collecting that and repurposing that for better uses? Also, there are little compost bins like this. This is one that I use under my sink. It's got a carbon filter at the top. It's got aeration holes. I noticed they even have them at Bed Bath & Beyond. They were under $20. And you think with a 20% off coupon, that's hardly anything. And they were stainless steel, and they make all different types. I just happened to come across this one at Ross one day. And look, this has my name on it. But in the base of this, I have red wigglers. It's the start of the vermicompost that I'll bring out to my worm farm on my patio. So it's just different ways that you could use things like that, give you a little idea of what that might look like, and I'm sure you have a plethora of ideas that I encourage you to share with one another. Lost my clicker. Let's talk about that black gold that we'll get from composting. It's one of the easiest things, the most beneficial things you can do for your garden, your local landfill, and I believe for you. So let's just start where you are. Do what you can and use what you have. You can make a difference. Little baby steps, you can do that. Just take that first step and start doing that today. Composting is a terrific way to reduce the amount of waste your family can put out. It's a great fertilizer. It's the best fertilizer. There's no fertilizer you're going to go buy that's going to be any better than living compost.
It's nature's fertilizer.
Absolutely. It improves your soil composition. It helps with water retention. The benefits are quite endless. Compost needs 4 basic ingredients to keep in mind: carbon, nitrogen, moisture, and air. Your carbon sources can be found in fall leaves, straw, wood chips, recycled paper, cardboard. I provided some handouts for you, and with that, you'll notice there are some examples of some things to compost, give you recipes for that, so you don't have to remember everything I'm sharing with you today. These things are readily available to access on the internet, on Pinterest, so don't feel like you have to be an expert today. You just take that first tiny step, taking a step forward, and you'll gravitate in the right direction of how to do that. But you have some basic information that's going to help you get started with that. Nitrogen is what's needed to help break down the carbon. It breaks down carbon, it's where the heat is generated. Heat is good. That's what speeds up the decomposition. We want our piles to get hot. Nitrogen is found in your green plant tissue, in our grass clippings, in the hedge trimmings, in the vegetable and kitchen scraps, your coffee grounds, your tea bags. You know, just next time you make yourself a cup of tea or you have those coffee grounds accessible, think about, do I want that to go in the landfill? Do I want that to go in the trash? I've reached in when somebody's thrown a banana peel or tea bag in my trash. I've reached in, gotten it out. I was like, no, not even one at my house. Not under my stewardship. And in fact, places like Starbucks and your coffee shops, you can ask them for their coffee grounds. And during growing season, you'll see people taking advantage of that. I've gone and left buckets and said, you know, would you collect this for me? Like a smaller Starbucks, for example, at Target or in Kroger's, where they didn't have a full system. Just to get them mindful of that, I've educated them, the workers, on the importance of that and how valuable it is to me, and gives me an opportunity to bless them in some way when I come and pick up the coffee grounds that they're collecting for me. So it just gets them involved in the process, and we're influencing those that we have an impact on around us. But those are available for free. I asked my husband to go and collect it from the coffee shop at his job, and he'll come. We just bring a big bucket, and they'll throw it in there and bring it back. So you might just put something with your contact information on it and ask them to do that. Some of them will remember, some won't. Remember, you're educating those people, helping them to make a difference so that you can make a difference. Moisture is needed for the earthworms, the fungi, the bacteria to live. If you don't have moisture, they'll die off. It's very important to have the correct moisture balance. Dry material resists decomposition, so your pile will become aerobic. It won't continue to do the work that you're needing it to do. So important. It needs to stay damp. Not wet, but damp. So as you add your layers, you're going to simply sprinkle a little bit of water. You might collect water with a rainwater bin. You might even just, if you leave your wheelbarrow, a container out with your leaves in there so that it can be collected quite naturally and moistened as you add the brown matter to the tops and the layers of your compost piles. Too much moisture isn't good, so beware of a swampy condition. In fact, when there's going to be an extended period of rain, and I tend to protect my piles with something that's non-porous, a tarp, so that it won't become too wet and yet collect the right amount of water and not something that I have to go back and correct. Composting bacteria need air and oxygen to work. So you need that aeration working for you. That's part of what the earthworms, the fungi, bacteria do that live in the soil. They help build those tunnels that draw air in. And the way you add air to your compost pile is as you're turning with your pitchfork or with a pole stick. Even when I take a temperature reading, this is a compost thermometer. So I monitor the temperature of my pile to be sure that it's not going aerobic. That's when you're growing the wrong kind of bacteria, the pathogens and things that you're going the opposite direction. So you can monitor the health of your pile more accurately when you are taking the temperature. You're wanting it to be between 135 to 160 degrees. But even when I'm doing that, I'll kind of poke some holes in and just think, let me give you a little breath of fresh air, kind of adding some oxygen in there. And as I take my temperature of my pile, I'll poke it around the sides of the pile, through the middle. I'll take readings in various different places to collect an average of that, just to monitor the health of the pile. These can be easily ordered. This is just a really inexpensive one, but there are all sorts of those available on the internet. Easy to come by, they're not expensive at all. So I also recommend you keep your piles covered. Some of you have property and you might have to protect it from any invasion of, I've got a cat that roams our neighborhood. It's like, I don't want him in there looking for things. Or any other critters or varmints that want to come around. You can protect it by covering or using a system that is a more closed system. I like to use cardboard, light cardboard material on the top of my compost piles and also throughout as a brown matter. And I've also found that when I've gone to Costco, you know how they'll have those end cap displays where there's a piece of thin cardboard similar to this, a little thicker than that, in between them. Do you know what they do with them?
You throw them away.
They throw them away. They go and put them back in the back and they don't do anything with them. You can go and ask for that. And say, you know these things, I have a use for that. Would you mind giving me those? And they will gladly give them to you. So look for those things. Have eyes to see all that's around you that you can be repurposing away from the landfill and benefiting you to building a healthy ecostructure in your soil. You know the canvases that are made out of spun-bound materials, kind of like your protected medical coverings, the buns, the cat covers, things like that. That's spun-bound material, that type of thing. Well, they make those at all different thicknesses and layers, but those are a really good type of material that will allow the air through that. So you just search for that on the internet.
Old cotton t-shirts.
Yes.
They got holes in them.
So think of your compost like a campfire. Nitrogen is the kindling. Water and oxygen is the match. Carbon keeps the pile smoldering, much like you would by placing a large log on a fire. I've given you this handout as an example of what your pile could look like. It's just a little recipe for it. Your base layer could be formed with some small twigs. Large branches are going to take a longer period of time to decompose. So the more you can break that down, the better you're going to do at creating the right environment for your compost pile to start and keep those available. In fact, we have a bin that we use as we trim our trees to be able to get a chipper. We've just borrowed a chipper. You don't have to own a chipper. You can borrow one, you can rent one. If you want to keep your wood chips your own. I figure the plants I grow are much healthier than anything else I'm going to go try to get anywhere else. So I want to keep those valuable resources and utilize them. So you can make those available to put at the base of your, as a starter. Then you add your brown matter, like the leaves. You'll see on there, it will give you a prescription of the things to add and how to do that. So you have a copy, and if any of you missed that, we have I have enough copies for everyone. So you add your brown, your greens, your brown, your greens, and then covering it with a brown layer. So I like to keep a large trash can or a place or a pile where I have some straw or leaves to add a brown matter. Every time I'm going to add some of my kitchen scraps, I throw a little bit of that on top of that. It helps to cover it, and it creates that next layer. In fact, in my little outdoor compost holder, my in-between step from my kitchen to my outdoor compost bin, at the base of this, I have some of the wood chips that we use. And then you could moisten those, but just put that in the base of that. You could put some of your pine needles or your leaves there. And let that be a starting base, especially if you've moistened it to the correct moisture temperature, but the level. But even your food scraps are going to add some moisture to that as it does the work for you. There's all types of things that you can use that are not on the list. That's not an exhaustive list. as you begin composting, you'll find there are so many things that are living. In fact, I listened to a soil scientist. You've heard me talk about him before, John Ferguson. He owns Nature's Way Resources in Conroe. And if I'm going to supplement on anything, he's someone I feel I can trust with the resources. So I brought a couple of his brochures that I asked him for because to me, it's worth it. I send my husband to Conroe to get, some amendments like that. In fact, you can go to his website to learn more about composting. And just a valuable resource. So if you're interested in that, here's information about that. But one of his talks described using even pieces of sheetrock. The sheetrock is organic. It has boron in it. So we were changing the lights in our kitchen. I thought, I'm not throwing away that sheetrock. Whereas before, I would have thought of that as just trash. Or my husband would have thought of that. Well, he thought of it as trash because he's not the passionate composter that I am. That's okay. We marry our opposites, don't we? Is to create a blend and a balance. That's God's creation, creative design. But anyway, I just went and pulled those things out, and I thought, I want to see how this composts. So anyway, it went into my pile. There's all sorts of things, and he has a more exhaustive list. You might access that list. Example, that's where I learned to use burlap. Your rags, your old t-shirt, underwear, socks, things like that. If it's not something that can be repurposed towards someone else in some way, it's not trash. Why let it go to the landfill? Those 100% natural fibers can be composted. Just throw that in your compost pile. So, if you get coffee in a burlap sack, valuable. Let's use it to do that job for us.
It changes the way that you shop.
Yes. So the steps to creating your own compost, number one would be choosing a container. You've got to start somewhere. So if it's just something you've got around your home that you can use, for example, last night as I was here setting up, I asked someone here, I said, do you have it, really as a test, do you have any plastic container that y'all throw away that has a lid on it? And they went looking, and they were all thinking about that. And I just explained to them how that this could be used as a compost bin and as an example for all of you. That's where this came from. So if you have containers like that, when people that use protein powders, if you buy snacks, that dead food that you get in a package in a large plastic container, well, at least reuse the container. Think about what could that be repurposed for? That could be a temporary thing you set underneath your sink in the cabinet, in the pantry somewhere, that you can temporarily put your makings of your compost, the living kitchen scraps. There are different types of containers you can use. You start with something that you're going to use in the kitchen, perhaps a go-between place if the inclement weather is interrupting that process, that you could keep on your patio or in your garage. And then there are lots of different types. But just to talk about a few, compost tumblers are one, compost barrels, compost bins, and just regular piles, just making a pile of something. And I'll share the advantages and disadvantages of each of these. For example, a compost tumbler, these are the enclosed barrels that they look like this. In fact, this one you can purchase. Here's one of mine that has, it's just a repurposed barrel that housed pickles one day, is now a compost tumbler. And my husband made this. Thank you, baby. But compost tumblers can rest on a gear or a wheel, and they're turned by a crank. So they help to provide that turning in an easier way. They're faster than other systems, so if that's something that's more desirable to you, that's a benefit that you can harness from that. They do tend to be a little more expensive. if you make it, you may pay a little, I mean, if you buy it, you may pay a little more, or you could do what my husband did for me and just see those creative things working. This one's even got a divided one where you have your new kitchen scraps, your fresh kitchen scraps, compared to the finished compost there. So there's lots of different ones. Again, the internet is a valuable tool to us these days. Compost barrels are a tidy way to compost. They resemble something like a trash can. Looks something like this. I have a similar one where you can harness the compost, the finished compost at the base, and it does have a cover on it, and you have air holes for aeration. But they make it trickier for any critters to access that. If you have property, this is a good system to consider. Difficult to add air by turning. Because it's more enclosed, it's a little bit more difficult to reach down in there and do that. It can be done, but just something to think about. And like I said, you can harvest from the hatch at the base of it. So it's just a great little system. Compost bins. That's simply a container that holds your compost, the decomposing waste matter in your kitchen scraps. Most of these are exposed to the environment. They're easier to maneuver the compost with a pitchfork, easier to turn, but you can also provide a little access for critters if you leave it uncovered. Here's an example of one of our members, Karen Santos, had her husband build this beautiful compost bin. This is Karen right here. So what a beautiful job, and I was just so excited to see her taking those steps. Here's my beautiful piles. Hey, my husband made these for me out of cedar. Each of these layers come off. This is an original setup. I'm still using it today. I have the various systems because I'm testing. I'm my own soil scientist. I want to see what works for me, and they do different things, work better at different times, and so I enjoy the exploration journey. So each of these layers go on, they can, or can be removed. So if I have my finished pile, I can remove each of those layers and easily just turn that with a pitchfork and harvest that into the wheelbarrow. On top of it is just, it'll be fabric, it could be light layers of cardboard material, leaves, it's always a top thing, or I even got some reused some feed sacks from a friend that had horses, and things like that. Just, does that go in the landfill, or can we do something with it to create life? Compost happens quite naturally. It always has, and we can harness the benefits of that if you just allow it to happen. You look in your forest all around you. That's where all the life is. For billions of years, it's been happening quite naturally. Unfortunately, many have neglected the stewardship of our land and have done harm by adding the wrong things, right? By robbing of the valuable nutrients that we need. We want to choose the location for a pile. Like I said, mine, I get my exercise for mine since it's the far corner of my lot. But if you prefer something closer, just what's going to be a good place for you? Just kind of think about that and maybe even research what are the things you want to consider. Something that's easily accessible, something that has great drainage. So you wouldn't want to put it on concrete. You want to put it on top of soil. What materials do you need? Well, you need a pitchfork or a shovel. You've got to be able to turn that, add air, and mix the layers. You need something to collect your kitchen scraps as a starting place. The carbon materials, the brown stuff. Again, you've got recipes that you can take home of what that looks like. And the nitrogen materials, the green stuff. And having a correct ratio to these to have a healthy compost. About a third of the green, the nitrogen source, to 2/3 of the brown. The brown will keep your pile aerated, and that keeps the worms and the microorganisms happy. we want to turn our compost once in a while, every week or two. It really depends on what is the health of your pile. What temperature is it rising to? If it's not getting hot enough, what do we need to add? If it's too, if it would be too hot, if it's going too fast, you'll be able to assess that. The air and oxygen getting into all the nooks and crannies by us poking our shovel or our poke stick or our pitchfork in there, moving that around is vital. Mixing your greens together, the fresh with the decomposed material, so all of that microbial life will be incorporated to do the job that it needs to. It mixes the bacteria with the microorganisms. For optimal health, you want to turn it every week or two, just as an average. But your pile's going to be different. Everybody's going to be putting different food scraps, different supplies in there. So it's going to make a difference. Your health, the structure of your pile is going to be different from anyone else's. So there's not just a set, let me just set my reminder for doing it this day of the week. No, you've got to assess your pile. Be sure that it's heating up to the correct temperature. But you usually don't have to do it more than about once a week. You can overdo it. For example, we don't want to tillage the soil or a compost pile where you're working it so much that you're killing off the microbiome. If your pile is not turned on a regular basis, it can cause it to become stagnant and more aerobic. If you get a smell from a pile, something's not right. It shouldn't. Something is off. That ammonia smell, that's a sign of something needs to change. And you can investigate that. It'll make it slower to decompose. I've given you this handout as well. Just some of the things to encourage you to incorporate. Again, the greens are the source of nitrogen. So your vegetable scraps, your fruit peels and rinds, algae, aquarium water, coffee grounds, tea grounds or tea leaves, your houseplants, your spent flowers. Manure from an herbivore animal is okay. Alfalfa meal or hay. Weeds that haven't gone to seed. You don't want to put those that have because you're going to be propagating seeds in that healthy environment. Bone meal, hair. When I go to get my hair trimmed, my hair is healthy. I want it in my pile. I always collect the hair when I get my hair trimmed. Feathers, fresh grass. When you mow the lawn and collect that. Your browns are the carbon source. Those are things like your dry leaves, the aged hay, cardboard egg cartons, newsprint. Now, a word about newsprint. Your ink, your colored ink can be toxic. It can have heavy metals in it, so you want to avoid those things. But regular newsprint, your phone books, there's lots of things. You look at things like, is that going to bring health? Or does it have a ratio of something that might not aid what I'm wanting it to do in the pile? Your chipped wood, dried grass, paper towels, paper towel holders, your shredded paper, straw, wood ash, 100% cotton, wool, or silk fabric, your coffee filters, peat moss, your pine needles, sawdust, your tea bags. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is a start to helping you think of what is valuable to add to your compost pile. And I've given you this list in the handouts that are provided. There are some things that you want to be careful not to add to your compost pile. And one of those things, as I said, was the colored paper, the toxic heavy metals that you might get from that. Your pet waste can be contaminated with disease, so guard against that. Cooked waste could become moldy. Bones take a long time, fish and meat, although, confession, I do go and get fish heads from the Asian market when I'm painting, and I will dig a hole deep and wide before my planting season and just thought, okay, I don't need to add the fish emulsion. I'm going to let the microorganisms do the work over time. So it's just an overall blanket statement I'm saying about this, depending at the stage that you're at. But those smells could attract animals and smells. In fact, I tend to put some lime or something over mine when I do that, coffee grounds and such. The herbicides and pesticides. Remember, poisons are meant to kill. So think about, what are you putting on your plants, on your gardens? Is it building and feeding a microbial world, or is it killing it? That runoff is going into the water that you drink, that you spend a lot of money filtering to get those things out of it. Everything that you're putting out there, is it creating life or death? Dead material that really have no life in them, and they virtually never break down, such as your metals, your plastic, your glass. Disease-ridden plants that have insects on them. No, if there's a problem there, throw that in the trash. You don't want it in your compost pile. That healthy pile we don't want anything disturbing the health of it. It could breed in the compost pile and spread quickly. Your charcoal ash, when you barbecue with briquettes, those have been sprayed with chemicals that are treated to help it light or burn. And that chemical residue is often left on those ashes, so that's something that we would want to avoid. Personal products, your personal feminine products, diapers, things like that, that is of no benefit. Now, these things won't hurt, but they can attract vermin and roaches. So your flour products, your breads, your pastas, baked goods, and even rice. So that's just a caution about using those kind of things. Let's troubleshoot a pile. There's some things that you might be watchful of. If your compost is too dry, well, you just need to water it more regularly. The microorganisms will die off if it is too dry. If it's not breaking down, it's probably either wet or too dry. Maybe it has too much brown matter in it, and you need to add some more nitrogen source, not enough green matter. If there's no heat, if your pile is not heating up, it needs to be brought to a balance between 135 to 160 degrees. Give it a good balance of browns and greens with airflow to create those optimal temperatures. Your pile might not be big enough. Maybe it's just a starting stage. It's not going to heat up until you get enough volume to create that heat. If your compost is stinky, there's a problem you want to assess. That ammonia is probably ammonia smell is probably because you have too much nitrogen. You need to perhaps turn the pile or add more brown matter. If it's rotten, it needs oxygen. It needs turning again. Keep it damp, not too wet. And a way to assess the moisture level of your plant without a meter is just to reach down in there. You know, it's so nice when it's hot. And you feel like, just getting to that point is just such a thrill. But to reach down in there and grab a handful of that, if it crumbles easily and just falls apart, it's probably too wet. Probably need more moisture. But if it will hold its shape, and you can hold it in your hand, and when you squeeze it, water's not pouring out of it. That would be too much water. If it's just a drop, or if it's just holding compact, that's probably a good moisture level for it. So that, just the fact that you're able to hold it that way, remember your compost is going to be 40 to 50% moisture at the correct level. It's going to hold moisture. So it holds moisture at the root level of your plants that you'll need water less, only really in the warmer summer, really the hot summer days, will you need to supplement that. But over time, you won't have to water your lawns, your garden, because your compost is going to create that healthy balance to maintain the correct moisture levels, and only need to be supplemented as needed. If it's uncovered, you could be attracting some maggots, flies, or other creatures. So you want to be sure to add some brown matter or cover it with some kind of covering. Different systems do a better job of that. If your pile is too chunky, perhaps the amendments that you've added are too large a size, as we said with the branches versus twigs. And it would just take too long to compost. To get the size that you want, you can actually use a sifter. And it could be something that you make, just a piece of some kind of screen material, the size that you're looking for, to sift out and get the finished compost that you're wanting to utilize. If the pieces that are too large, just throw that back in the compost pile to allow it to compost longer. When life gives you compost, you can grow a garden, and a healthy one.
It's my favorite.
If we are what we eat, surely what we eat is only as healthy and sustainable as the soil it comes from. Something to think about in the food that we're purchasing or in the food that we're growing. I encourage you to grow a garden. You will have the healthiest, the most nutrient-packed foods if you can grow it yourself and optimize the condition of that soil. Gardening is like medicine. It's a good medicine. It doesn't need a prescription, and there's no limit to the dosage. Just being out in that fresh air. Dirt is healthy for you to play with, to be in all those microorganisms. You know, our ancestors, our parents and grandparents that gardened, they were never sick. They were practicing all those things and around all the healthy atmosphere, harnessing those things. Now, I'm sorry, these worms only eat organic, fair trade, shade-grown, biodynamic, raw dirt. You can do it. I encourage you. You can do it. Start somewhere. Start with just that little kitchen composter and add some things of that to make you think that first step, what is going to be the next step? It's that doing the next right thing towards composting, towards building health in that whole microbiome. Gardening is the slowest form of performing arts, but it is an art, and you're going to learn and grow from your mistakes. I've learned and grown. I'm not an authority, but I'm passionate about it, and you can easily access answers to any question or problem that might arise. Gardening is cheaper than therapy, and you can get tomatoes.
Amen, sister.
You welcome the bees, the butterflies, the birds, the other things that are going to be the other end of that tropic level. I grow plants for many reasons. It's pleasing to my soul. It challenges my patience, but it is a joy to see a garden grow. And I most often find that happiness right where I planted it, and so will you. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. We can make a difference. You can make a difference just doing your part one step at a time. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you today my passion. I don't have all the answers, as I said, but I'm happy to share what I know. Most of all, I hope that I've brought some encouragement to you to do something to make a difference, to divert things away from your landfill. Perhaps think about the way you're planting and gardening, taking a step towards a more organic approach. We're either fostering life or death in what we're putting on our soil. And the difference between dirt and soil, dirt is just brown matter. It's dead. It's what you buy in a bag that is dead, lacking any life source. But you can grow rich, healthy soil that will feed the microbes and build and grow healthy plants. So I thank you so much for your time, for your patience, for being such a wonderful audience, for the privilege and the honor of sharing with you today my passion. Thank you so much. Anyone not get the handouts? I also want to point out, excuse me, a couple of resources that I would highly recommend. There are lots of great books, but this is some of the best. Teaming with Microbes, to help you understand organic gardening guide and the soil food web, how all of that works together. Teaming with fungi, there's other types of those. Attracting beneficial bugs to your garden. Building soils and better crops. That everything's going on beneath the surface of your soil. Remember, they're only getting air and carbon dioxide above it. Everything else goes below. So if I can be of any help, if any of you did not get one of the resource handouts, I have more available and I'm happy to help. So thank you.
Thank you. So if y'all have any questions, if y'all want to just grab a hold of her real quick, we got some other things we need to talk about. So